Ever since I was a little boy, I've always wanted to be in a band. It never happened, and I never learned how to play an instrument, which is partly why. But what I did do was begin a process that continues to this day, which is to imagine potential band names and song titles, just in case I ever got the call to be in a band. I'm Dario Robleto. I'm an artist and I live in Houston, Texas. So you're looking at a three-part cut paper sculpture. I call it more of a sculpture since it's very physical, three-dimensional. It's all cut by hand. You're looking at three imaginary record labels that I've invented, imagining the records they would be releasing for the year. But the twist is that each of these labels is emphasizing a different position. One from a religious point of view, religious pop songs, a middle one that's focused on science and imagining scientists who have, rock bands in the evening, and the songs they might sing. And then the third one is somewhere in between, which is more thinking about the traditions and history of folk medicine, which is somewhere in between a type of hard science and some leaps of faith in the logic. So the point being that they're all sort of conflicting in some fundamental way about their beliefs. And I'm reflecting that through the language and visual design elements of record labels in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Another format that I love that we don't see as much today is what's known as the Battle of the Bands, of having competing bands, often in a singing competition on different stages, and the camera would just turn to one to the other. So I'm imagining this as a type of Battle of the Bands, but again along religion, science, and folk medicine, and the conflicting points of view that they would be singing about. Spent many years, I'm sure it amounts to years of my life in thrift stores and garage sales, looking for old album covers. I love rare record labels. In particular, there's a wide range of Christian albums that nobody really remembers. So I've built a stockpile of all of these sort of forgotten fonts and record label designs, and these are all sourced from those decades of obscure late record labels, in particular religious ones. So I will cut from the album cover if I just want the font of that particular word, and merge it with the font of another one, as well as the record label designs. So these are original compositions of mine, but they're sourced from many different places across decades of album covers. There's one other subtext here, which is the flowers, and it's yet another interest of mine that folds into this project, which is the history of craft traditions produced in a state of loss or grief or mourning. It's a beautiful multicultural tradition of people compelled to make something. These are generally not artists, but just everyday people who are compelled to create in the moment of grief or loss. And I'm a student of that my whole life, and cut paper flowers is one of those traditions. And so, although they're meant to look festive and add a layer of sort of joyous celebration to these record labels, they're also a nod to a deeper lineage of humans creating in a moment of loss. And that's relevant here because if you have a chance, if a viewer were to come in and read some of the actual song titles, there's a melancholic streak to the language in all of these albums about contending with the loss of life. I've always been interested in multiple disciplines' approach to this, fundamental feature of life, that it ends. And of course, religions have much to say about this. And then you have something like a scientist or a physicist weighing in on death. Nonetheless, someone like Carl Sagan, who I admire very much, one of the most profound things, I'm paraphrasing, but one of the most profound things he ever said, that he felt science made a mistake by ceding the spiritual to religion, that however we want to define the spiritual, about how we treat each other now and our obligations to the future and our children, that science has something to say about those traditions as well, including death. And so there's a tension, though, about what happens to us when we die and what are our obligations to each other's memories once we've passed away. Every material that composes the human body, all the more complicated materials, were literally birthed inside of a star. Physics says that's the only way most of the materials of our body could be made, in the particular physics and pressure and heat of a star that one day goes supernova and disperses that material across a universe, such that one day it coheres again into a planet that then, incredibly, bodies arise from. Again, Sagan's famous comment that we're made of stardust is literally true, and I want to embrace the poetic dimension of that statement while acknowledging the material fact of it. I don't think you have to let go of the type of spiritual insight that comes with the awe behind knowing that we're made of stars. You don't have to let go of the awe while acknowledging the factual nature of that statement. I tend to spend so much time preparing. As I said, it took me years to come up with the language, sourcing the language because I just had to invent it over time. Then buying all those records, accumulating them, sort of categorizing them based on design and fonts, then cutting those elements out, sort of making an archive for myself. I tend to go into a type of frenzy and try to finish the work without stopping. I mean, I hit limitations on my body as far as sleep and food, but I just kept going and going. And it is a type of frenzy, a type of spiritual, ecstatic, maybe the closest I'll get to speaking in tongues. To be born without having willed it. It's a very philosophical statement about free will, which is always a complicated issue within religion and science. But again, in the language, I love the poetry of a song title, like you just got to get to the point. But can it hold such a huge immersive question? Here gets to another tension between the fields. This one is called "Believers Will Never Discover They Are Right," and "Atheists Will Never Discover They Are Wrong." And a title like that is really meant to poke at the unsurety of all of this, that we can make all our claims that we want, but even for religion and science, there's some quality of the unknown that will always cloud our discussions about these topics. I mean, I'm interested in the emotional life of a scientist, is a better way to say it, because, and if nature's telling them that, the heart is nothing but a complicated pump, or the body is nothing but a particular arrangement of molecules, again, that might be factually true, but of course that'd be missing out on a beautiful range of human understanding and experience. I'm deflecting all of this onto scientists and religious believers, but I am this person too. I'm asking all these questions because I'm asking them. I'm not the first to discover that you have to have some humility when thinking about these questions. You have to have a sense of humor, a playfulness. Otherwise, it gets dark really fast.